told me a great deal about God Almighty and hell.
He lost the nanny abruptly. He turned to his father as someone to help him and be with him, replacing the companionship, affection that the nurse had provided for him, happened once more.
The branch of industry in which my father was concerned collapsed.
Life, accepted, respected, to the ghetto of Vienna. And there the father was unable to earn a living. And from that moment on, they had poverty.
His father hired a tutor, and that tutor gave him some rudimentary lessons in biblical Hebrew so he could read prayers. In retrospect,
he made Jewish history flow out far beyond the limitations of nationalism or dogma.
Sigmund easily won admission to secondary school. There, he would enter a whole new life.
The second half of the 19th century is distinguished by the war between science and religion. That was not...
The new teaching captivated his imagination.
I felt an overpowering need to understand something of the riddles of the world in which we live. And perhaps...
Staples Lewis tells us his own life story with a purpose. His is a journey toward belief in God.
In 1907, they moved into Little Lee.
Here, my first stories were written and illustrated. They were in a...
Jack and his older brother Warren spent all their time together, playmates and companions. Together, they made a magical private world.
That was the first beauty I ever knew. It made me aware of nature as something cool, dewy, fresh, exuberant. Everything seems like a dream. Anything seems possible. And all sorts of ideas float through your mind. It was something of desire. But before I knew what I desired, the desire was gone. The world turned commonplace again.
Throughout his life, Lewis would often remember the feeling aroused in him by the toy garden. He named that feeling joy.
There's a pang of desire that this garden brings back, as though he once was someplace which is now beyond his reach. It's lost to him, and he wants desperately to return to that.
My father's good qualities, as well as his weaknesses, incapacitated him for the task of bringing up two noisy and mischievous schoolboys.
Albert was distraught. Now, we all know that if possible, the survivor needs to be strong for the children. But in this case, I think the children were simply partly devastated by the fact that not only had their mother died, but their father was falling apart in front of them.
From work. Then the lightning flashed and the thunder roared. He said he would close the house and we should be sent away to America. Being still a boy, I believed in these threats. I would awake at night, and if I did not immediately hear my brother's breathing from the neighboring bed, I often suspected my father and he had secretly risen.
The most heart-wrenching episode in all of Lewis's literature, I think, happens in The Magician's Nephew, when the little boy picks the apple that Aslan sent him for and knows that he lies dying at home in England and realizes that this magic apple could cure her. And the witch says, take it, take just a slice of it. The lion will never know, and it will cure your mother. Back to his dying mother and gives it to her. And we see the middle-aged C.S. Lewis writing in his book of fantasy what he couldn't achieve in life.
A role in accepting or rejecting a specific worldview. How much did reason play a role in it? These periodic, extraordinarily intense feelings of longing. Do you think that this is universal? Have you experienced it?
The universal human drive for wholeness, for internal unity and unity with the universe. I think it's a religious instinct, if we can call it that way, not an organized religious instinct.
Well, how much did that play a role in your own worldview?
I think it's deepened my sense that we all have an organic drive towards the other, capital O. I mean, we're born into it. We're born as relational creatures. The first things we do is we look at our mom's faces. Yes, I would.
Has anyone else experienced anything in their lives that might be categorized by this description that Lewis gives?
Ever since I've been a little girl, I've had, and on the other hand, when I went to college, and then at a certain point, I began to do Buddhist meditation and to recognize that what I was experiencing was not an empty mind, but the divine presence.
The greatest moments that I've experienced spirituality has been seeing people who make that life commitment to sort of break the momentum of living in a capitalist society, who say, okay, I'm going to try to create order in this society. I'm going to use my life to try to create peace. That's the transformative moment for me. It's not in...
I agree with you. I mean, in the practice of medicine, one-on-one with a patient in a relationship, you know, it's so rare that one has that degree of concentration in dialogue with another. Very spiritual experiences.
I agree that giving yourself to others is uplifting and actually may make you happier than if you live only for yourself. And I believe that people experience connectedness to the world and to others and have these transcendent emotions. But does that say anything about the existence of the supernatural, or is that just a phenomenon that we as human beings experience?
See, I think, Jeremy, it's that notion that we really have the spark of the divine. Every person you meet, whatever culture, background, when you take the time to listen to the stories, you see where God has, the hound of heaven, has really been after that person or has touched that person. And they've never had a chance to share it because they would not even call themselves religious. And,
yeah, but this hound of heaven, the small voice, the spark, these are words trying to describe something.
Well, that's part of the journey, trying to put inadequate wording to something that's so majestic and so unbelievable. It's just hard to know how to...
Here's a problem. I'll tell you what troubles me about this conversation about it, because I feel like I'm getting lost a bit, is, number one, to the extent that people do have these religious or spiritual experiences, whether you call it an oceanic feeling or a transcendent experience or some sense of connectedness, it's not clear, even if you label it spiritual, where that gets you.
For me, the scientific worldview generates that kind of feeling of transcendence. An early experience, I suppose, would be Carl Sagan's Cosmos. I think Carl, more than anybody else, gave the feeling of the pure